In today's video, we are going to discuss the back-end settings of an individual blog post on your Squarespace website. Let's get into it. Today, I'm going to use my demo site to go over the differences between the settings on your individual blog posts. First, click your blog, then go to blog content, then see these three dots, click those and press settings. Anything that's regarding your back end is going to be in this section. The first part of this video, we are going to talk about the content section. This is where your featured image is. So whatever image you have on your blog post, either the first one or the main one, that should be your featured image, so that the consistency between all of your blogs, from seeing the featured image to actually opening it up and then reading your blog, it'll keep it nice and consistent and people won't feel like they're out of place. Once you remove the image, it'll pop up right here to say search. So I will do that for you really quick. Search for images, or you can drag and drop the image that you want added there. You just have to make sure that the loading is done before you move into a different area. And then once it's loaded, you can continue making your edits. You can edit that image in here. This is your focal point. This is important for people that are using and adjusting the size of the original image on the blog overview areas. We want to make sure that the focal point is chosen depending on the shape that you use for all of your featured images, especially if you're not going to create custom images for your featured image. And you don't have to, especially if there's no words on it. Next, we have the excerpt area. And an excerpt is basically a description or a prelude to your actual blog post. You don't have to show an excerpt of your blog on any part of your website if you don't want to. However, I highly recommend adding at least the first 3 sentences of your blog post to the excerpt, whether you decide to show it or not, because on all summaries of your blog post, and a summary block is something that we discussed in a different video, but basically you can add a summary block of your blog on any website page that you want. The auto setting is to show an excerpt. So we want to make sure that at the very least delete the filler text that pops up anytime you create a new blog post. Again, whether you want to show it or not, I would recommend switching this information out to the first 1 to 3 sentences of your specific blog post. And if you're like, that's boring, I want to be creative, I want to add something new, then I would do a short summary, keeping it between 2 to 4 sentences about that specific blog post. And you want to make sure that you are very conscious of what your overview looks like and how much space you have. Let's say you decide to use an overview where you have 5 blogs all next to each other, and then you're writing this long excerpt of every single blog. It's going to be narrow and long, and it's not going to look cute, and it's going to totally mess up your professionalism of your website. So we need to be aware and conscious of what goes in our excerpt, whether we decide to show it or not. Then below that, we have the post URL. Every single one of your posts will have a unique URL, whether you edit it or not. The key is to make sure that you are editing them, so that way when somebody goes to look at your URL or share your URL, they are sharing one that actually matches the blog post that you've created. In most cases, you're going to be duplicating a past blog post in order to create a new one, especially if your blog has templated options, because otherwise creating a brand new one is going to make you start from scratch every single time. So what's going to happen when you duplicate it is you are going to see the blog post title from the one that you duplicated it, and then these extra fun letters that makes it an original URL for this new blog post. So we want to make sure that we are updating this URL, match it directly to the blog post title. That is the simplest option that you can choose. If you choose to do this option, make sure that you are adding a dash in between each word, so that way SEO can read it as a sentence rather than one long gibberish word. So for instance, if your blog post URL does not have dashes in between each word, it is going to look a little something like this. This is not SEO strong for a URL. We want to make sure that we are adding dashes in between. When you are typing, you're going to notice the space bar does not work for you. Whether you press the space bar or not, it's still going to put words and letters directly next to each other. So we want to make sure that we are actually adding the dash ourselves. Blog dash post dash title dash or. Now, does that get a little bit annoying? Absolutely yes. However, fun fact with Squarespace, when you copy a sentence into a URL area, it'll automatically add the dashes where the spaces are for you. So a quick solution for this is to make sure that you are just copying and pasting the exact title of your blog post into your blog post URL area. Next, your blog post author. Blogs do have multiple authors. Some businesses have multiple authors, and they want to make sure they are showcasing said author. Now, when you are on your individual blog post page, it does not automatically showcase the author at the bottom. You actually have to toggle that on. So if you're in edit section and you scroll down to show author profile, this cute little profile of me will pop up if you have not edited your author. So if I made a template for you on the blog area of your website and you duplicate that before changing the author to you, I will be an author for your blog post. So once you have access to your website, you will automatically have created a author profile for yourself. If you want to update that bio, I have a video where it'll walk you through exactly how to edit it. But in the meantime, let's get back to editing your settings. We want to make sure that every single template that I've made for you, the blog author is automatically switched over. You will see my Her Messy Bun name there as well as yours. And if you have an employee, if they make your blog posts for you, they will automatically become the author and will need to make sure they're changing it to your profile. This is also another area where you can duplicate this specific blog post if you choose to. But again, as you click the three dots, you can see it right there. So you don't necessarily need to open up the settings in order to do it. It's just there if you need it. Now let's go over the options section. The options section of your setting talks about the status, the tags, the categories, your comments, and your featured posts. Let's start with status. Every template that I make for blogs or that has a blog, the information will automatically be published when you receive that template. And the reason is I want to make sure that I'm showcasing what the possibility of this blog will be. So that way, before you purchase it, you can see it. So anytime you get a template from me, your blog post will be live. Before you publish your website, please make sure that you edit these blog posts or at least toggle off whether or not you want your blog to be live or not. This is where you can turn every single one of your individual blog posts into a draft. In here, all you would have to do is toggle between the published to the draft and you're good to go. As you can see, when you pick draft or needs to be reviewed, you will not see a calendar. When you're in published or scheduled, you will see a calendar. So if you're in published, you'll see that it's been published on June 19th, 2019 at 3:05 p.m. In order to change that date, sadly, from a 2019 to 2024, you're going to have to do a lot of clicking, and that is clicking these arrows until you get to the month and year that you want to be in. And once you find the month and the year that you want, you're going to pick the day, edit the time if that's necessary for you. Now, scheduling wise, pick the date and adjust the time of when you want it to be scheduled. So if you want it to be scheduled tomorrow morning at 11:30, find tomorrow's date on this calendar, and then you will move the slider to that specific time, press save, and boom, it will be scheduled. Let's go back. Now let's move on to tags. If you've already added tags to other blog posts, you can find those tags by starting to type the word within this area. Now we have no tags for this blog on this demo site, but let's just create one really quick. We'll say blog post tags. When you type a new one, you have to press enter in order for the new one to come through. And you see that this is all lowercase. I want to show you something that's extremely important. We're going to go to a different blog post that has no tags, and I start typing blog post tags and I use a capital B and I press enter. I have now created a brand new tag. And the reason why I want you to pay attention to this is because if we press save and then we go into another one, you're now duplicating tags, but they're not going to actually be talking to each other. And we want our tags to talk to each other. So we need to be very cautious of how we are typing these tags out. My recommendation is to keep everything lowercase, because when you are using a URL, there is no such thing as a capital. And when you are creating tags, you are creating new URLs for your specific blog post. Now that's a little confusing, but just stay with me. For SEO and URL purposes, stick with lowercase. You can technically add as many tags as you want. You just can't add duplicate blog post tags. So let's say I'm going to actually add blog post tags and I'm typing it all in lowercase. I go to add that one and it says this tag already exists. And what it means by that is it already exists for this blog post. We can also choose to remove this tag and start all over. Downside for tags is that you cannot drag and drop them wherever you want. So please make sure that you're adding the tags in order of importance. So for instance, the importance would be what this blog post is actually about. And then we're going to add a few tags about your actual business. So my recommendation is to focus on 5 tags for that specific blog post and stick to it. Again, tags are a little confusing. So if you're confused on what to put in a tag, this is where you would put key phrases that you want to add that are a little bit more refined from the category. Social media, business, personal. Those are very broad categories. Now we want to add some tags about the specific blog posts within there. This blog post is about social media, but more specifically, it's about X, Y, and Z. If you're like, I still have no clue what you're talking about, that's okay. Not many people do. My recommendation is to not add any tags whatsoever. It will take time to get good at it. And once you get good at it, then you're going to end up having to backtrack into old posts and update it all over again. What is important is your categories. So next we're going to go into categories and we are going to make sure that we categorize this blog post how it's supposed to be. It's recommended to only have 1 category per blog post. If you're like, Danielle, there's absolutely no way I can only put 1 category on this blog post. It definitely needs 2. This is where the tags come into play. So pay attention to those moments where you're like, no, there's got to be multiple categories for this. It's most likely a tag option for you. So if there's already an existing category, like category 1 from a template that I've created for you, you can either do 2 options. If you haven't edited that name in the back end of your site of your blog overview, you can delete it from here and then you can start typing and adding a new category or typing and adding the correct category. So for instance, let's say it's for category 3. And I want to add that. As soon as you click it, it's already added. We want to make sure that we save all of our changes. Every time you press save, though, it will exit out of this. So we can just press back and continue on to the other options under options. Comments would be basically what you hear and what you see when you think of comments on a blog post. You can toggle that on and it'll automatically create the comments option on your blog post if you want people to comment on it, and well as if you want people to comment on your Pinterest pins. Now let's move on to the featured post section. And one of the most common mistakes is that people will either make 0 blog posts a featured post, or they will make every single blog post a featured post. And the reason why this is a mistake is because the most simplest way of creating a quick view of a new blog post or the latest blog post, or even highlighting the blog posts that best represent your business, is by turning that blog post into a featured post. And all you do is toggle it on. And it's as simple as that. That is it for the options section. Next, let's discuss your SEO. Your SEO is technically optional. I highly recommend filling it in because SEO is extremely important for every single website, no matter what kind of website you are running. If you want people to find you on the internet, which I'm assuming you do since you have a website, you need to make sure that every single page of your website's SEO is updated, even if it says optional. And the reason for this is because while yes, Squarespace does an amazing job in setting it up so that search engines will automatically fill in those blanks for you, we want to make sure that we are putting the correct information on it because AI is not always correct. Your SEO title for your blog posts can be your blog post titles. It's as simple as that. Even though it will automatically generate it, I want you to still type it in here. So this way, search engine won't override that title for you. Now, you can see this number right next to it says 100. The best and strong SEO titles are between 50 and 60 characters. If your website is set up where you're automatically going to have your website name after the blog post title, it does not showcase that in the countdown. So you need to take that into account when you are doing your titles. Then the next thing I want you to do is look at your SEO description. This can be one of 2 things. The first one is 1 to 2 sentences describing what your blog post is about, or Or what I like better and what I've seen work better is a catchy phrase to get people to want to read it. If you're creating blog posts that you want people to read because it's funny, it's clever, it's interesting, they'll learn from it, find a way to turn and reverse engineer what your blog post is about into a catchy description. So that way you can catch their attention when they are searching it on Google and be like, that's funny. I actually want to click this one. Because the more original you are, the easier it is to show you. Now, back in the day, people used to say, oh my gosh, fill it with a bunch of key phrases, keywords. Make sure you're using them back to back to back to back. Don't do that anymore. Google realized people were doing it and they were like, that these descriptions make no sense. We're not going to push you because your description makes no sense. Be as human as possible in your description, and that is your best option for being pushed in the search engines. Keep it short, keep it simple, and keep it human. Next, let's move on to your social image. This is the social image that will be shared when somebody takes your URL, pastes it into Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it's called now, or when somebody sends your URL in a message format. So a text, an Instagram private message, anything like that. This is that image that pops up. Keep this image as simple as possible. And again, you can search for images here. So if you want to use the same one as your featured one, you'll see that it's already here. You click and you add and boom. Now you have your featured image and your shared image being exactly the same. Let's move on to the sharing section. So if you want to automatically share a post to Pinterest, to Twitter, to Facebook, to whatever social media platform that allows that to happen, this is where you would connect your accounts. You just click confirm and then add your accounts if they're not already added. If they're already added, it'll be so much easier to do this. Next is the location. The location option is such an underrated option. And the reason for this is because we want to make sure that we are sharing as much information as we possibly can. So if you are a physical location, make sure that you're adding your physical location in every single blog post. If you have an event and you're talking about your event, make sure you're sharing that event's location in this blog post. If you are doing reviews for people, whether that be a restaurant or their business, make sure you are sharing their business address that is a physical address in this location. Because what happens when you share the location of somebody else's business that you are talking about in that blog post, what you're giving yourself is the opportunity to show up when their business name is searched on Google. Because it might be in the blog post, but now it's also in the back end as well. Those are all of the options for your back end settings of individual blog posts. If you have any questions at all, please make sure to add them to the comment section because I can go into so much more details in every single area of what we just discussed today. And don't forget to check out the video regarding how to edit your Squarespace profile bio, especially if you want to make sure that you show up as the author at the bottom of every single one of your blog posts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.